welcome to this week's episode of the PS We Expire podcast. I'm your host, Morgan Motzinger. Today, we are talking about the big question, what is my purpose? Now, this is episode 19, and I am going to share with you a little bit about kind of from an existential point of view, what is my purpose, but also how do you figure out what your unique purpose is? And I have a beautiful template for you to be able to dig into that. Before we get into the episode, I want to invite you to join the after party. So every week, when the juices are still flowing after I've hit stop on a podcast episode, I record a little bit additional video after that, like 5 to 10 minutes, where I share things that I'm not sharing anywhere else on social media. I'm not sharing on a podcast. I'm not sharing it on public YouTube, anything. I just share it with this specific email list. Now, one of the reasons why I do that is because it's like inviting you into the next layer of thought. So a lot of what I share on the podcast, I feel like is helpful and appeals to a wider audience. What I'm sharing in the after party is just behind that layer a little bit more to some of my either personal stories or more personal insights into whatever the topic is that I happen to be sharing that week. So I would love for you to join me for the after party. You got to get on this particular email list, and it's in the show notes, the link for that, or you can also go to morganmotzinger.com and you can find the information there to sign up for the after party. Thank you very much for joining me today on this episode of the PS We Expire podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Today, I want to answer the question, what is my purpose? This is a big question. And why am I tackling this? Okay, I'm really not going to tackle it in all of the ways that philosophers and psychologists and theologians have tried to tackle this question through the centuries. I will do a very briefly touch on what I believe our purpose is collectively as humans. But really what I want to talk about is our individual purpose. And this is such a fun question because this is something that I have wrestled with and struggled with and fought with and questioned over and over and over again for my life is, what is my purpose? What is going on here at a deeper level that I'm supposed to do? And feeling a bit like I'm just kind of floating on the surface here, knowing that there's something else. I can feel it in my bones. There's something for me to do, but I don't know what it is. And if you are someone that has felt like that or currently feels like that, I have some insight that I think will bring a lot of peace and a lot of calm to your life and a lot of joy. So I'm briefly going to dip my toe into the pond of what is our purpose as a human species. I'm not going to stay there very long because even though I have done a lot of study, a lot of introspection, a lot of talking with other people about this concept, I haven't landed anywhere in particular yet. And I'll give you just a little bit of background as far as what informs how I think about this. I was part of the evangelical Christian faith for most of my life. My college education was at a religious university where I studied the Bible in depth for 4 years. And then after that, served in ministry in my church, led Bible studies, did a shit ton of studying on my own about theology and the Bible and religious culture and community, etc. In, I would say probably 6 years ago or so, I started to have questions that I could not answer within that framework. And I started to get really curious about ideas and ways of thinking that were outside of what was offered to me within that religious system. And I ended up exiting from that little by little as I had more and more questions and things that didn't make sense to me anymore. I exited that. So I have definitely not thrown out the baby with the bathwater, that I have taken a lot of deep understanding and truth from that belief system into how I think about God and think about our purpose and think about how things kind of work in this reality. If you are interested in hearing more about what that transition was like, my sister and I recorded an episode on leaving evangelicalism, and it is, I'm just going to tell you really quick as soon as I can find it. It is episode number 10, Leaving the Evangelical Faith of Our Childhood with Geneva Bennett, who's my sister. So if you're interested in knowing more about kind of what I believe now and what that journey was like in that transition, you can go back and listen to that episode. But for all intents and purposes today, where I have landed, but still kind of hover around here, because I definitely have this, my belief systems are saturated with curiosity and open-mindedness. And also the more that I learn, the more that I understand that I don't know. So I very carefully tread in any type of context where I am required to define my beliefs. I'm not going to do that. But I will say this, what I find to be a very fascinating way to think about this from a zoomed out perspective of what is my purpose. I like to think about our souls being part of divine energy or consciousness or God from forever, because energy doesn't ever go away. We know that within the science that has discovered that energy doesn't ever go away. It only changes function. I don't even know if that's an accurate way to say that, honestly. I'm like showing my lack of ability to communicate what I'm trying to say here, but that energy isn't ever lost. It just takes on different forms. So that we are on a soul level, because I don't believe that we are just these physical beings and that's all there is. I do believe that there is a part of us that is connected to consciousness, that there is this part of us who is part of God. And that I have asked myself this question, like, if I was or am eternal and decided to take an incarnation in this body, why would I do that? Why would I choose to come as a human? Why would I choose to experience this way of being in this time period, et cetera? And I do think that one of the reasons why we want to have human experiences in these bodies is because something that is unique to humans besides other animals is that we have a wide spectrum of emotion. I mean, some of that is crossover because we know that animals do feel emotion, but we have a wider cache of emotional capacity, which also we have the ability to increase over time as we learn and develop and grow. We also have the ability to observe ourselves having these emotions. So emotions are vibrations in our body. They are a physical experience of something that is generated by our minds, which I think is just like such a fascinating concept. If you want to learn, well, I can put in the show notes like the recommended readings that I have if you want to explore this concept of emotions as a result of the things that we think about as a result of our brains. But our emotions are vibrations in our body. So if you think about it like this, if you are angry, anger doesn't just live in your head with this label on it that says, oh, I am feeling angry. Anger shows up in feelings and sensations in our bodies, right? Sadness shows up as feeling and sensations in our bodies. Happiness does, et cetera, et cetera. So emotions are something that we experience in this physical body. So if I am a soul and I want to pop into a human experience that is uniquely human, then perhaps one of the purposes of doing that is to experience the full spectrum of human emotion. The other reason why we want to be in these bodies is because we want to experience a sense of separateness. So if our souls are connected to everything, then what would be the benefit to coming into this human body where we are so certain that we are separate from everything else? I think it's just to experience the contrast and like the polarity of knowing that we are actually at our core not separate, but that our physical experience is that we are separate. So on a atomic level, there is actually no difference between this hand, my left hand and my right hand that are touching. There's no barriers there. Barriers don't actually exist because we are all, our entire world, including ourselves, is made up of mainly empty space within an atom, right? So an atom, you've got oh my gosh. Okay, no, I'm not going to go into this, but the fascinating thing is that like barriers don't actually exist, and that scientists can't not explain why when I touch a wall, why my hand doesn't go through it. So do some additional reading in this realm of things if you want to, but my point is that our separateness is an illusion, and it is a part of this human experience. So from a zoomed out, like way zoomed out perspective of what is my purpose, we can think about our purpose in this human experience is experiencing emotion and experiencing a sense of separateness. Okay, now let's zoom in, because this is what I think people are more interested in if you're not doing a lot of like abstract philosophical theological thinking. We'll zoom into this question of what is my purpose. And really what we're asking, I believe what we're asking here is the operative word my. So what is my purpose? We want to know that we are uniquely tapped into something meaningful and something that is bigger than ourselves. So I think that it is our souls trying to get back to the understanding and the experience of true connectedness. Now, the way that I want to encourage you to find what your purpose is, this is so fun because this applies to everybody. This is not just for you. This is for all of us. Now, the way that this, I don't know, it's not really a framework, but the way that this concept is going to flesh out in your life is going to be unique to you. But the guidelines for it are for everyone. So I believe that our purpose is connection and creation. Okay, what do I mean by those things? Let's start with connection. Our purpose of connection shows up in 4 ways. Our connection to nature, our connection to God, source, universe, consciousness, whatever you want to label it that works for you, our connection to others, and our connection to ourselves. So think about the times when you feel, it almost is difficult to describe, but I'm positive that you felt this at some point. When you feel like a really deep sense of being seen, being understood, being part of something bigger, this comes to me most easily when I'm out in nature and when I am pulled into a feeling of awe. I have experienced this many, many times. I live on the Oregon coast, and the Oregon coast is so varied and beautiful and lush and green, and a lot of tall cliffs, a lot of rocks out in the ocean. And when I do, some type of hike that is near the ocean, and I see firsthand how very, very tiny I am compared to my physical environment, I see how very tiny and minuscule I am. Somehow, paradoxically, at the same time, I feel so deeply important to, I don't know, to someone. I feel like I am really loved, and I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. So I think that's a good way to describe what this feeling of awe is, where I simultaneously experience and know that there are many, many things happening outside of me that are much, much bigger than me. And also what's happening inside of me and in my life and in my inner being is really important. That's important. So nature is one of the ways that I most easily can tap into this feeling of connectedness. The next is connection to source, God, divine consciousness. Many people find this, I mean, to me, it feels very similarly to how I feel in nature, but most of the time, like when I feel connected to God is through music, listening to music that really moves me emotionally. I feel connected to God. I feel connected to God when I am in a state of real calm and presence, and in a state of like when I have needed help and I feel like it comes to me. That's when I feel connected to God. Our connection with others. These are the connections that we make, not just with the people who are closest to us in our lives, but also the connections that we make with a stranger on the street. And every connection that we make with someone, there is an energy exchange. So the energy with which you bring to a relationship absolutely is going to impact the other person and vice versa. Our relationships are always reciprocal, even if they're not intentionally reciprocal. So the energy with which we bring to our connections with others. And lastly, our connection with ourselves. This probably is one area that we neglect the most, where we have not developed the ability to be alone, that we are constantly in a state of not wanting to just sit and hear our own thoughts. Maybe for some people that's really scary because the thoughts are a scary place to be, or the memories are a scary place to be. And so we avoid connecting with ourselves in that way. But finding ways to connect with our bodies, to connect with how we're really feeling about things. There is a ton of science that talks about how important the mind-body connection is. And if we neglect ourselves as a whole person, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, that we create all sorts of really difficult problems for ourselves through, disease, chronic illness, pain, depression, anxiety, etc. A lot of that stems from a disconnection from ourselves. The barriers to connection would be things like, and these are barriers to connection in any of those 4 areas. Barriers to connection are anger, jealousy, a lack of integrity, lying or hiding, unforgiveness, bitterness, and resentment. Those are all going to create barriers to connection with others, with ourselves. The funny way that it's not funny, but one of the ways that we also create barriers to connection within nature is when we see ourselves in the position of takers, and we don't see ourselves in a position of all being interconnected and symbiotic with our ecosystems, with nature, etc. So we can cause disconnection when we're not being mindful of the impact that our choices are having on our physical environment. Okay, so that's the first one, is connection. The second one is creation. So our brains are always creating, always, always, always creating. So this is something that comes naturally to us as humans, that we are always creating our realities. Now, the little caveat that I will put on here is that the realities that live in our minds are very rarely the capital R reality. So we live in the stories that we have told ourselves about our circumstances, about the people in our lives, about ourselves. We live in those stories. And our memories are inaccurate. One of the ways that you could test out this idea that I'm sharing with you is to talk with one of your siblings or a parent about an experience that you had as a child, and you will find that they have a different experience than you do, that the details are different, that the timeline is different. So our memories are very, very faulty. I barely can remember stuff that happened yesterday. How can I expect to have a really clear memory that impacts me in the way that I want it to about something that happened a really long time ago? So if we are unconscious of the stories that we tell ourselves and that we hang on to those stories as reality, that is what we are creating in our minds and in our bodies. You are always creating. It depends on if you're doing it intentionally or not. So barriers to creating intentionally are shame and a lack of connection. So if we are not connecting with others in authentic ways and connecting with ourselves in authentic ways, we are not able to create intentionally. The concept of flow, which I think is just like the flow state. Maybe you've kind of heard this, or maybe you're like, I've never heard this flow state. I don't know what that means, but I know that you've experienced it. Flow state happens when we are, I'm about to give away my key here to creation connection, but that's fine. I'll share it with you anyway. The flow state happens when like you get involved or immersed in some type of activity or experience, whether that is when you're talking with someone and you are really connecting on a deep level, or you are involved in an activity that is just requiring all of your concentration and something that you are proficient enough at that you can really be immersed in whatever it is. So for some people, this might be painting, or this might be surfing, or for me, I get into flow state pretty easily when I'm riding a motorcycle. The key, I'll share the key with you now, because I think this is going to bring this all together for you. The key to creation, and especially intentional creation and connection, deep connection, is presence, is being able to be exactly where you are mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, to be very, very present. So when you are in the flow state, the reason why you dip into flow state is because the task either requires all of your faculties to be focused on whatever you're doing, because, it's like a safety thing or whatever, like I would say with surfing or skiing or riding a motorcycle. The activity demands total presence so that you don't hurt yourself. The fun thing and the amazing thing about developing the ability to be very, very present in your life is that this is what creates true connection with others as well. When you are so immersed in a conversation that you aren't thinking about what you're going to say next, when you're not thinking, I wish this person would hurry up and finish what they're saying so that I can get my words in, so that I can share my wisdom, or so that I can rebuttal whatever they're saying, or, so it's the true presence is what creates the most deep connection with other people. I suspect that you have experienced this with children, because kids are really, really good at being present. Part of that is because developmentally, their brains have not fully formed their ability to think long-term. So kids don't have to wrestle with their long-term thinking part of their brain, because that's just not fully developed yet. And that enables them to be so present in what they're doing. And this is why I think that kids just, not only do they not hold on to things very long, like I could have, one of my kids who is like really like at a 10, super angry about something, and 2 minutes later, totally back to normal and fine and doesn't ever bring it up again. Adults don't do that. Adults hang on to that, and we decide to make that thing dictate how we're going to think about how things are going to be in the future. And we think about how it's all connected to the past. So kids have just this innate ability to be very, very present, which allows them to move through uncomfortable emotions a lot faster, but it also enables them to have so much joy in whatever they're doing. So this is why, like oh man, I remember like when my kids were little, I would say probably like 3 or 4, and I would take them on a walk. And I had to force myself so many times to slow down and look at things with them, because every single thing was like this new discovery. Every single leaf was amazing, and every single bug was like the most fascinating thing that they had ever seen. We would do well to adopt this kind of mindset, that we would become like children when we are connecting with nature, that we would become like children when we are connecting with God, that we would become like children as we're connecting with others, that we would become like children as we're connecting with ourselves. Because what that is this introduction to, not an introduction, but an integration of curiosity. Curiosity is what allows us to be fully present, because curiosity always says what's possible. Now, if we are unintentionally already mentally creating what's possible, it makes it very difficult for us to be present. So the introduction of curiosity and openness to whatever comes next through our ability to be present helps us create and connect in ways that bring so much deep satisfaction to our lives. So when we ask this question of what is my purpose, I want you to think about it like this. My purpose is to create. My purpose is to connect. And the way that I can experience this in a fully satisfying way is to practice being present. So when you answer these questions, or when you start to integrate and adopt this understanding into your life, then it becomes less relevant, the mechanisms for which you create and connect. I will flesh that out a little bit more. When you are really tapped into how it feels in your body to be doing particular activities, or meeting with certain people, or being in certain places in nature, when you get a sense of what it tastes like to be in alignment with your soul, then this becomes so much easier, because you stop looking at it through a lens of what should I be doing? What are other people telling me that I should be doing? Or what is my life supposed to look like when I'm 20, 25, 30, 50, 70? It doesn't matter, because when you get into this flow of creation and connection, and you are committed to being present as you do those things, as you create and connect, there is so much satisfaction there. And the vehicle to get that is irrelevant. So your purpose, your job then is to find the things that resonate with you. Let's say you got like 2 tuning forks set up, and they're not touching, but they're next to each other, and they are at different frequencies. Okay. So let's say one tuning fork is an A, and one tuning fork is a B flat. If you bang on the B flat tuning fork, the A tuning fork will not vibrate, and it will not put off a sound. Okay. If you bring a different tuning fork in there, and it's an A, and the other tuning fork is an A, if you bonk on the one tuning fork that's an A, the other tuning fork is going to vibrate and put off sound. So what your job is, and this is so fun. Your job is to pull different tuning forks into your life and see which one resonates with you. So you are going to pull different experiences into your life and see what they feel like. You are going to explore different types of relationships. You are going to explore different types of ways of connecting with God. You are going to explore different types of ways of connecting with yourself. You are going to find what resonates with you on a deeper level. And one of the keys here too is like that you have to learn how to develop really deep self-trust, because sometimes the thing that resonates with you isn't going to make sense to anybody else. And I think this is where we get ourselves into trouble, is when we know when something resonates with us or doesn't resonate with us, but we don't have that layer of self-trust on a deep level developed. And so we ignore what we know. So your job to discover what your unique purpose is not a heavy job. This is a job of curiosity, and this is a job of opening yourself up to new experiences. If you are unwilling to introduce new experiences into your life, there will be fewer things that resonate with you, if that makes sense. It's like, okay, like back to the tuning fork analogy. I've got the A tuning fork, and I am comfortable with bringing in like maybe 5 of 200 tuning forks to see what resonates. My tuning fork metaphor is breaking down. So I'll talk about it more so in like what it actually is. If I am stuck in this pattern of only doing things that I feel comfortable with based on the stories that I tell myself about my past and about my present and about what I think is going to happen in the future, if I'm only pulling in experiences that fit in with what I'm comfortable with, then I am missing out on the opportunity to see how many other things that are available in this human experience. I'm missing out on the opportunity to see how many things resonate with me. And what that is stifling your joy. It is cramping your capacity to experience all that life has to offer. The joy that comes with a commitment to trying new things as a way to dip into creation and connection. Oh, we are limiting our experience. We're limiting this human experience. Anyone who pursues hard things enough will tell you how deeply satisfying it is to learn how to be uncomfortable and to learn how to allow trying and failing, and will tell you how deeply satisfying it is to stumble across something that you didn't think that you would like, and it turns out that you do. So just to kind of sum up, our purpose as humans in this life, what is our purpose? It is to create and to connect. And the key that turns the lock of creation and connection is true presence. If you want to develop your skill of being present, there's a lot of things that you can do to become better at being really mindful and present. And I won't dip into that in this episode, but I will share that one of the best ways and the biggest, easiest, and also like most impactful tool that I have used to increase my capacity to be very, very present is meditation. So if meditation is new to you or it feels a little bit woo-woo, whatever, I want to encourage you just to test it out, just to see if a meditation practice of, 5, 10, 15 minutes where maybe all you're doing is counting your breaths. Maybe all you're doing is, there's a ton of different meditations that you can do, but to find one that works for you, because meditation isn't just about the moments, it's about what learning to be present does for the rest of your life, does for the rest of your day. If I learn in those moments what mindfulness really feels like and what presence truly feels like in my brain and my body, that I can translate that into connections with other people. So, in the moments when I'm feeling heated and I'm feeling frustrated in communication, I can tap into my ability to be very present, to observe my thoughts, observe my feelings, and to not continue to create barriers to my connection with other people through a lack of mindfulness. Anyway, I'm going to do a whole nother episode on meditation and talk about how that's been has had such a positive impact on my life, but I will leave it there for now. So creation and connection experience through true presence. So I hope that this was helpful to you today, and I'm so Glad that you joined me for this episode of the PS We Expire podcast. And before we go, PS We Expire.